Welcome everybody to Convince and Convert. It is Jay Baer, joined today by a very special guest, my friend, who is the Director of Community and All Things Fabulous at Blogworld, and also the author of Online Community Management for Dummies, Ms. Deb Ng. Deb, how are you?
I'm terrific, Jay. How are you?
I am marvelous, and I love your festive red background for videos.
Thank you. This is my dining room. We're renovating, so everywhere I was sitting today, I'm like, oh, I don't want people to see that. Oh, I don't want people to see that. So I came in my dining room where it was just a red backdrop.
It looks great. You should use it. I really like it. It pops.
Well, my husband is Chinese, and red is a very lucky color. So
there you go. So you have to eat all meals there.
Well, we don't. We hardly eat any meals here.
You eat all kinds of unlucky meals on the couch. I understand. I understand how it works. Well, I loved the book. I thought it was really fantastic. I've recommended it to several clients already. It really is a treasure trove of advice and best practices around community management. How was it like writing it?
It was fun writing it. It was, it's the stuff I've always wanted to write. And it's the stuff I talk about when I speak at conferences and I've blogged about. And it was actually a hard sell for Wiley. They weren't sure people would want to buy a book about community management. But it sort of wrote itself. It was the easiest thing I ever wrote. I have to say, it was so simple to write.
Wow, that's a ringing endorsement. Easiest thing you ever wrote. That'll work.
Well, it's second nature, I think, to me. I don't know if that sounds kind of silly, but it just all came so quickly.
Well, and you can tell when you read it that you actually have done this, and that you're speaking in many cases from a place where you have experienced these scenarios. And that's one of the things I really liked about it, is that it walks you through a lot of, hey, if this happens, do this thing, and if this other thing happens, do this thing. It's not just sort of theory of community management. It's very tactical, very practical, and something that I think people will keep on the shelf and sort of pull down and say, let me flip to that section. I remember Deb said something smart about that.
I hope so.
One of the things that I see all the time, and you do as well, I'm sure, now that many companies have sort of come around to the belief that they should have a community, there isn't a lot of community activation, or perhaps not as much as there should be. You talk about that in a little bit in the book. How can we get people to do stuff as opposed to just click one button and join?
It's hard because we don't want to spam people, and we don't want to say, will you please comment on my blog, damn it. And I think we've all had those frustrating moments where nobody answers, our calls to action. So I think we have to make it entertaining. We have to make it enjoyable. We can't always be a commercial for our product. You have to make life a conversation and draw the community in. If they feel as if they have a say in the brand and that they're a living, breathing part of the community, they'll participate more and they'll advocate for you.
I think that's an excellent point about feeling like they are part of the community. Chris Brogan has said that the only difference between audience and community is the direction the chairs are facing, and I think that's so true, that a lot of companies now are creating content and pushing it at community members as opposed to basically creating a clubhouse and then inviting people.
It sort of has to be open-ended. I could say what I have to say and leave it at that, but that's sort of my way or the highway. If I say what I have to say and then invite others to maybe share their tips and their opinions and tell me why I'm wrong or right, then everybody is in the mix and they all are contributing. And for the brand, that's important as well because it's giving us a perspective that we didn't consider.
What we see now is, as companies get more serious about this kind of work, an increasing usage of content calendars and community calendars and things to have more of a plan around how to do this. Do you think that kind of work is the enemy of true community, or can they coexist?
Yes and no. I do like to. I do have some things that I do on a regular basis. For example, the first Monday of every month is Brag Your Blog Day on the Blogworld Facebook page, because I don't want to forget. And if I don't schedule a certain day for things, I forget. But I will say I've never scheduled a tweet in my life. I don't believe they're engaging. I have scheduled blog feeds on Twitter, but I don't schedule tweets because you can't have a conversation. You can't schedule community. So I think there are times when you can create an editorial calendar and plan out a course of action. But as far as scheduling engagement, I just don't see it happening.
I like that quote, you can't schedule community. That's good. Consider that stolen.
I've blogged it already.
Oh, well, then I will steal it and link to it. I'm glad you mentioned Facebook, in particular the Blogworld Facebook page, which is really burgeoned into something pretty awesome. And it's funny because so many of those people have their own blogs, but they all kind of trickle in and interact there, which is really, I think, quite commendable for your skills as a community manager. So many times now it seems that Facebook in particular has become the de facto community platform.
Right.
How do you feel about that?
I have mixed feelings. I love that. Now, first of all, Facebook is where the people are. The majority of Americans, or even globally, the people who we want to reach are on Facebook. So it makes sense that we put a lot of our effort into Facebook. Most of my friends and neighbors don't want anything to do with Twitter or Google Plus or Pinterest or any of the other social networks. So it makes sense that we're on Facebook. But I really do wish that I could have the same engagement levels on the other social networks. Twitter has turned into such a disappointment for me because it used to be the best place to go for conversation. Now it's sporadic unless we have our weekly Twitter chats, and it's sort of like a link farm. So I will always put half my efforts, I would say, for the day into Facebook to try to grow that community, because that's where we have to be, and that's where most of our community are. But I won't give up on the others as well.
Very interesting. What do you think about Facebook rolling out timelines for brands, and now we're going to have to sort of redo the entire way that Facebook pages are designed and managed and operated?
I'm not a fan of the timeline. I tried it. I was one of the early adapters. I tried it, and I immediately got rid of it. I don't feel that it is pleasing to the eye. I don't feel, that's my dog whining, by the way. I don't feel that it's intuitive for people, especially people who aren't necessarily into social media. And so I don't think it's something that should be forced on us. And I think that there are ways we can work on other ways to be creative on Facebook without having timelines sort of forced on us.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be interesting to see if there's a real backlash there, not only for making individuals use it, which appears to be coming soon, but rolling it out for brands as well. You obviously got your start managing blog communities and forums and things of that nature, and now Facebook. Do you have some things that you keep in mind, sort of clear differences between managing a Facebook community and a blog community?
I think that with Facebook, I get more what I like to call civilians, people who aren't necessarily part of the blogosphere and part of the social media space, but the people who you see every day who aren't a part of my work world. Blogging, the people who usually come and comment on blogs are other bloggers, so they're more apprised of the etiquette and how the conversation works, and not just the Me Too type comments. So Facebook, I'm prepared to have a different kind of moderation for the people who might not necessarily know about the right types of commenting etiquette and the white comments we like to see.
Yeah, interesting. I hadn't thought about it that way, but I guess that does make a lot of sense that your Facebook members may not have done this very long and have to have maybe a sterner hand on the moderation side. Is interesting.
A sterner hand, but also some, gentle guidance. If you're just going to come along and say no to a question, I'm not going to leave it at that. Maybe I'll say, well, why do you feel that way? But somebody coming to my blog might know no is not the right answer to give.
Yeah,
So you want to draw them out.
Speaking of which, one of the things that you said in the book was sort of trying to steer your community away from negativity, which I thought was a really commendable point to make, because we see, certainly in the social media space, there are blogs out there that seem to use negativity as their oxygen. I try not to kind of fall into that trap myself, but they're out there.
Sure.
What's your take on it?
Well, I think that negativity begets negativity. And so if you have a space that makes people feel uncomfortable, it's going to be like the Earth after the apocalypse. Only the cockroaches are going to be there. People who thrive on negativity are going to stick around. But the people who want an intelligent conversation where they're not always being accused of something or being called a loser, they're going to move on. So I have no problem with disagreement as long as it's respectful disagreement. I know that I'm not right all the time, most of the time. But you can tell me why without telling me, to go make a sandwich.
Yeah, so can we disagree without being disagreeable?
Exactly. And I'm not a fan of swearing on blogs, and I know that some people are okay with that. But I also think you have to do what makes your community feel comfortable. If most people aren't comfortable with swearing, that's just the way they are. So if you're somebody who does this a lot, just be prepared for the type of community that you'll have, and that you're going to lose a lot of people who would like to follow you, but they're just turned off by the language.
Interesting. One of the things that I loved about the book was your section on the welcome plan, which I think gets overlooked so often
right.
in communities of, it doesn't matter whether it's a blog or Facebook, that first time that person kind of peeks their head out is when you really have to give them succor and comfort and make sure that they stick around. Can you talk a little bit about that welcome plan and how you think it should be done?
Sure. I compare online communities sort of to the high school dance. So nobody ever wants to be the first one up to dance. So maybe the chaperone will sort of start encouraging people to get up and dance. They might introduce a couple, or get up to dance herself, although, we would laugh at any chaperone who did that.
I was just thinking about that. I'm like, yeah, that would really get the party started when the chaperones are dancing.
But somebody has to get the party started, and that's where the community manager or moderator comes in. And so this is probably works mostly for forums or blogs because they have an area for this. But a welcome folder with frequently asked questions, a place to introduce yourself, and just a place to ask questions. It makes people feel at ease. And then maybe the community manager can help to get that person, sort of make them feel comfortable around the community, introduce them to people, and just sort of bring them into the conversation. I honestly believe that it's in a community manager's best interest to know as much about her members or his members as possible, because then they can draw them into the conversation and know their areas of interest.
Absolutely. I feel like we should start, for Facebook pages that are really intended to be communities, we should start creating tabs with some of that welcome FAQ kind of information. We don't do that on Facebook very much, but we probably should.
Yeah, we should, for sure.
Towards the end of the book, you have a really fantastic section called 10 Tasks, 10 Skills of Community Management. Really useful. That part in and of itself ought to be an ebook download that people can just take with them. Was that something that you wanted to do? Was that something that publishers thought you should do, or how did that come together?
That's in most Dummies books. It's called The Art of Tens, and there are 3 sections of tens. And so I was able to create whichever part of tens I wanted, and those were the 3 I chose.
Yeah, it was really, really useful.
Thank you.
One of the things that you've always done really well is sort of done the combination online, offline community, right? That your community doesn't really exist unless it exists at some point in 3 dimensions.
Right.
And can you elaborate on that a little bit and how you can sort of make your community work in the real world?
Well, I think that it's fine and dandy for you and I to tweet a lot and talk on Facebook now and then, but what do we really know about each other? besides, what we share. And you don't really know a person, I think, until you meet them online. And it's when you know people, you trust them. And I think that by showing our community that I'm just a regular person, that I'm not, I don't know how anybody would see me as anything but a regular person, but I just think that there's a myth attached to people with more than 5,000 Twitter followers or something, and it's just important to come down. Liz Strauss, the first time I ever saw her speak, said you have to come down off your podium at one point, and I took that to heart. And when I meet people, I just enjoy meeting people so much, and I think that it adds so much more to our relationship that I can refer back to our personal conversations when we go back to talking again on the social networks.
Yeah, and that's one of the great things about Blogworld is it allows those kind of interactions and conversations to take place, and why it's an event that most of the people in the social media and blogging industry would never dream of missing. So
it's the first conference I ever attended, actually.
Wow. I want to see if anybody else who is watching this video, the first time they ever went to our conference ended up being the community manager for that conference. That would be some sort of a crazy...
Years later, too, because that was in 2007. I was hired in 2010.
Yeah,
so.
that is a... Wow, I didn't know. That's a crazy tale. How about that? Good for you. Yeah. Well, I am a big fan of this book. Do not let the fact that it is a Dummies book scare you, or do not look down your nose at it, because I feel like I know a fair amount about this kind of stuff, and I learned a lot from this book, and I really recommend you pick it up and just keep it by your side. You will turn to it on occasion. It's like a fire extinguisher of knowledge, and I'm really, really glad you wrote it, and I'm looking forward to seeing you at Blogworld. June, right?
Yes.
Is that right? June.
And I'll be at South by Southwest as well.
That is going to be a crazy time as usual.
Yes.
Too crazy, perhaps.
Always.
Exactly. I'll be the guy with the margaritas. Deb, thank you as always for all that you do and for writing the book and for spending a little time here at Convince and Convert.
Thank you so much for having me, Jay.
See ya.
Bye-bye.